Okay, we're back. So, we've discussed the shape of these hyperbola functions. Please read through the information. You've got this all available to you. And then you can start on these questions now. I think 1, 2, and 3. 3 we should have a look at. Coming up with the equations is very simple. Because if we have y equals some number, a, they've called it, on x, we therefore could write x times y equals a. Well, I've got an x and a y here, right? Hence, 4 times 2 equals, what number is it? It's 8. So the equation for this first question, 3a, is there. There it is. If you want to write it in this form, y equals 8 divide x. Nice and easy. If we maybe just look at one more of those, what about this one here? We would have, get my pen, y, xy, x times y equals minus 16. Therefore, I'll write the equation y equals minus 16 on x. Notice how, compared to this first one, where the function's graphing in quadrant 1 and 3, this one's graphing in quadrant 2 and quadrant 4, as I would expect it to, because this is a negative. So that's pretty straightforward. Clear. Cursor down. Question 4, xy equals 4, which is closest to the origin. Well, it will be 2 and 2. 2 times 2 is 4. I wouldn't overthink that too much. If we make this a 4, there we go. So x times y equals 4. Can you see that the closest to the origin would be that point there, 2 and 2, as opposed to some point up here or some point over there. So that's question 4 there. Here, question 5. I want to start getting into these worded questions. It's quite interesting how the book starts with applications of hyperbola and showing you that they have these practical applications. It's kind of interesting. This question 5, right? I talked about it previously in the other video. It's like we've got xy equals 96. 96 is representing distance, speed, kilometers per hour. Distance divide time, right? Therefore, speed times time equals distance. Because this is a journey from home to a friend's house, this distance is constant. It's always the same amount. If I was to think about this as a graph, okay, so we've got our speed, that's on my y-axis, and then on my x-axis I'm going to have time. Right. We've got the shape of the hyperbola happening. Oh, hang on, had a little malfunction there. Let's try that again. Maybe I should change colour. No. So it says 24 kilometers an hour, 4 hours. Maybe we're, I don't know, out there. Not drawn to scale. So x was 4, y was 24. Right. Now if I took longer time to do the journey, my speed would be dropping, right? If I took a shorter time, I would need to be going faster in order to do the 96 kilometers. how long would it take to travel the same distance, 32? So I would suggest writing something like this in your book. You could say S times T equals 96, right? In the first instance, we had 24 times 4. To get that 96, we could have worked out the 96, right? We didn't actually need them to tell us. They did in 5a, or indirectly. Now we've got a new speed 32. We've got some new time. I'll just write t for time. But it still has to equal 96. So I'm thinking, well, 32 times something equals 96. I want to solve. I can divide both sides by 32. And it follows that. I should be writing it down there, but this pen's quite difficult to use and it's going to go off my pad. So the time would have to be 3 hours. Okay. So 32 times 3 equals 96. Using this structure, I can do pretty much every question here, all the worded questions. So for example, let's fast forward and look for another one. Make a little jump. How about number 8? Peter, he has 15 birds, finches. They take 6 days to empty their seed container. Maybe not as obvious as speed with distances and times. We've got 15 finches, I'll call them F. We've got 6 days, and that's 15 finches for 6 days. That's how long it takes them to eat a full seed container. So maybe I'll call it seeds. Speaking, the units would be finch days, which is kind of a bit odd to think about. But maybe if I do this, it will make more sense of it. Because 15 times 6 equals 90, right? So if I only had one finch times 90 days, it would be like I've got enough seed to last one finch 90 days. And that's what I'm working out. Or you could change this to 90. I could 90 finches for 1 day. Right? So I've got enough seed in my container that could feed 90 finches in a day. Well, maybe help you think about the units because they're a bit odd. Not as easy to think about as a distance, which was just kilometres. Now, the question, how long would it take the zebra finches to consume the same quantity of seed, the 90, before the 3 were added? As they did, the same quantity of seed as they did before the 3. Oh, they add 3. Oh, here. He added 3 more finches. Oh, okay. Right, just draw a line there. 15F times 6D equaled 90. But I've now got 3 more. 18F times some number of days equals 90. Right? So when it's saying how long would it take to consume, this is what we're working out here. How many days? Now, because 5 times 18 is 90, that's the answer, right? So therefore, 5 days. And you see how I've lined it up like this. I think this makes the question fairly easy to work out, right? Now, there's one near the end that was a bit more confusing. So let's look at that one quickly. Oh, it's here, number 10. A platoon of 30 soldiers are provisioned for 16 days. So 30 soldiers, I'll call them S for soldiers, 16 days gives us some amount of provisions, which I should work out, shouldn't I? 480 soldier days worth of provisions. But I might just write provisions. Provisions. It's a little bit hard to think about the units in some of these questions. But effectively I've got soldier days. And again, to think about this, you might want to think to yourself, well, it's as if I had 480 soldiers one day. It's like I've got, or maybe it's easier to think about this way, one soldier. I've got 480 days worth of provisions for one soldier. It's just that I've got 30 soldiers, right? Okay. Now it says, after 3 days it was necessary to evacuate 3 sick soldiers. How much longer will the provisions now last after? So they were lasting 16 days. Now they're going to last a bit longer because they're taking away, evacuate, right? 3 sick soldiers, right? So those, they're being, but it only happens after 3 days, right? So, basically we can divide this by 16. We've got 16 days worth of provisions here. So maybe I could think of it like this. Day 1, you had 30 soldiers and only one day, and they ate 30 provisions, right? If I took that 30 and times it by 16, I get to 480, and that's all of the provisions, right? Or you could just think to yourself, well, I've just worked out by doing 30 times 16 is 480. Just worked out I had 480 provisions total. Right? How many is that per day? That gets me back to my 30. So because if you did 480 divide 16, you get 30, as you would expect. And that's how many provisions will be used up per day. A bit confusing to discuss this one, but it does make sense. So, right. So if you've got 3 days at 30 soldiers, you are, after 3 days, only going to have 3 times 30 is 90, right? So 480 minus 90, you're going to have 390 after 3 days. We've got a new amount, 390. Okay? We don't know how many days are left, but we do know how many soldiers there are now because they got rid of 3. So that's 27 soldiers times some amount of days, I'll just say D for days, equals 390. Okay? 39 divide 27. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to go to a calculator now to work out the answer. I hope. There we go. Let's exit out of that. Oh, I know what's happening. The cursor's not selected. Bear with me. Let's quit out of this thing. All right. 390 provisions, only 27 soldiers now. 14.44 more days. Okay. So, think that answers the question. Therefore, 14.44 days is the answer, because it says how much longer, right? So even there's a total of, we already had 3 days, so there's a total of 17.4444. You want to write 4/9 days. That's recurring. So there's a total of 17, but the question says how much longer will the provisions now last after the 3 days? So the answer would be 14.44 days. Okay, so as you can see, set amount of provisions, new amount of soldiers, and then we can work out what that would have to be. All right, thank you.